I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, hello, fellow board members. Good evening. Happy Tuesday. Happy pre-St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, one day.
And Helene, thank you for that, because I was just going to do a sound check, because during the pledge, I only heard myself.
There you go.
Okay, why don't we get a few administrative things out of the way? So Janelle, as always, a round of applause and thank you for the construction of the minutes and well captured. I sent over my track changes, I think minor things. I shared them with the entire board. So I guess, does anybody have any comments or edits with respect to the minutes capturing Tuesday, March 2nd's meeting?
Excellent job.
Good, Steve, you're on mute, just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get them,
Okay,
that I didn't see him come in, so I missed, became a co-host.
no worries.
I can talk now.
There you are.
I have three very, very minor things. Let's see, page 3 under section 6. The second paragraph down starts with Karen Lane explained. I think so the wording is just a little obtuse. Perhaps it was stated that way, but the site plan is a bit of a confusion because of her original thought. I think if we just change that to be the site plan is a bit confusing. Janelle there?
She's here. Janelle, you have to unmute yourself, Janelle.
Okay. You hear me
Alright.
now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Were you able to find that, Janelle?
Yes, I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
Next.
And page 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph down. Starts with Heidi Emmerich said she had another thought.
Yep.
He asked about lighting so about lighting so that the guests are safe going back and forth to their vehicles. Also, if there is
If there
lighting.
is, yep.
And the last one is page 7. The last paragraph before the 21 sub 2 discussion starts with co-chairman Sorbellini recapped.
Yes.
You have co-chairman Dibble, Helene Grant, Nick Berger, Tim Peck. The following members voted in agreement and Heidi Emmerich opposed.
Yeah, she didn't vote in agreement.
Right, so I think that'd be better if we ended the sentence. Voted in agreement to the motion, Tim Peck, period. And start a new sentence versus having that part of the previous sentence, because
Okay.
with grammar being what it is, you don't know that opposed only applied to Heidi.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay. Anybody else?
No.
Okay, so with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes with the noted edits, capturing the meeting from March 2nd, 2021. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's show second by Mr. Timothy Peck.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Appreciate it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Janelle, and we're all here in attendance. I actually didn't see that. Is Nick here? Ed's here?
Yes, I did see Nick.
Okay. All right, great. Then we're all here and there's no absentees.
Is Victoria on at the meeting?
Yeah, she
No,
is.
that was my next comment.
Or at least
Yes,
she came
Victoria's
on.
here.
Victoria's here. Victoria Reed
Yes,
right
she
there.
is.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So, so to that point, Victoria, I just wanted to inquire, was the request for continuing education with respect to the efforts and the attendance of subject matter experts that the board's putting in. Has that been socialized with the town board, and is there a consensus?
It was discussed at the town board meeting. And Dave, you have to help me with this. We agreed to grant continuing education credits, and the number was
2 hours.
2 hours. And we can revisit later in the year.
So they agreed for 2 hours.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. So that's great for our new members who potentially, there's a state requirement from the Department of State, 4 hours annually. So, certainly you're putting in the time. So I'm not going to say we're really doing you any favors. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Victoria.
And
Thanks.
we anticipate granting 2 more if things continue as they are later in the year. We just wanted to evaluate it later.
Yes.
It's
Thank you very
somewhat
much.
early in the year.
Yeah,
Yep.
we wanted to revisit probably September.
Well, thank you both for your, for advocating and acknowledging the level of effort and the knowledge that's being procured during this process. So thank you.
There's no question you guys are working hard.
That's it. Okay, so we have a public hearing.
Can I give one administrative? If anybody on here doesn't have their full name on their account, can you either update it, or if you don't know how, chat to me and I'll update it, please?
Thank you, David. So again, the request is if you're in attendance, if you would just update your name to your full name so we can capture it for the record, it would be appreciated, or use the chat. Thank you. So at 7:10, we're going to continue with the public hearing for 20 sub 10 Sailor Mill Farm, major subdivision. So that's the plan. I guess, board, is there anything else we need to discuss before we get there? And certainly, Catherine, I have the notes that you requested, and I'll certainly do that once we open the public hearing, reopen the public hearing. We're good, Janelle, in terms of the agenda for our next session, right? So that's what, April 6th? Is there anything-
Yes, so far what we have is a 7:10 public hearing for Maurice Lane's site plan and subdivision applications. And at 7:35, there's a scheduled public hearing for Scott Blair and Jamie Gittler's application. And then after the public hearings, there will be, I guess, further review of Mr. LaFlèche's application. I've not received anything further back from him yet, so I'm not sure about that. And we are still up in the air about the Ted Gier application.
All right, so just administratively, and I don't want to go down any rabbit holes, but just real briefly, Mr. Ingram, do we have a definitive on the zoning on Mountain Road with respect?
I can step in on that a little bit, so I can tell you no.
Okay.
I did not bother sending it to you guys just before I came upstairs. I checked the emails, and there is a lengthy email from Mr. and Mrs. Lamonda to Mr. Sifranco. And I understand that Mr. Sifranco and John, they're all looking into the situation.
Okay. Thank you. And then with regard to the LaFlèche application, the snow is gone, and we were going to plan a site visit. So do we have any dates for that?
I did not send anything. I was actually going to do that after this meeting tonight, so I wasn't sure. I know you guys had said weekdays or weekends, but then you also wanted me to reach out to, the superintendent of highways and the fire department and things like that. I mean, do you have a preference? Would you prefer to do it now that the days are a little bit brighter, longer? I mean, do you prefer a quick view of it during a weeknight? If that is better, or do you prefer to have it on a weekend?
Personally, I'd prefer it during a weekday after work, maybe to your point, it's a little daylight, but I know everybody has obligations. So what does the board think? Is there a consensus?
Agreed.
How about you, Heidi? I mean, you're pretty taxed.
Yeah, no, a day after work would be perfect.
All right, so with regard to that then, so like what is the earliest time of an after work schedule that I would be reaching out to anybody about? like what's a safe time to say? 5:30, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, 5 for me, anytime after 5.
I'm
Think
good
that-
whenever. I mean, I get off pretty early.
Mr. Sorbellini?
Yeah, let's do 5. That's fine.
Any time after 5? Okay.
Okay,
So I'll reach out to Mr. LaFleche and then the other departments of the town and see what we can arrange for a weeknight at around 5 o'clock.
okay, excellent. So with that, it's 7:10 PM on March 16th, 2021. And I will make a motion that we reopen the seeker public hearing for 20 sub 10 Salem Mill Farm LLC, Lower Salem Mill Road in Olive Bridge, New York, major subdivision of 64.348 acres. May I get a second?
I'll
Nick will
second.
Looks like Nick Berger wins by a syllable. All right.
Very competitive.
Thank you very much. So for all of you in attendance, thank you for joining. Thank you for your patience and your thoughts and your contributions to this project. I would just like to remind you kindly, we do have some rules of conduct with regard to the public hearing, just in terms of keeping it, constructive. So if you would please identify yourself by name and address. We already have a list of, I believe it's 33 speakers, only in the order of as they were requested. That's how they're on the lineup. So if you would do that, that would be great. And again, we probably have that information if you filled it out on the Zoom screen. We are shifting to a 3-minute limit. And I would just ask you please to respect that. We are going to have an audible chime at about 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Certainly, we won't cut you off mid-word, but if you could just, stay within that parameter, and I'll give you a gentle reminder. I would ask you to please, abstain from any foul language, swearing, insulting. Certainly, we're all adults here. One note, we've heard a lot from the public, both verbally and written, and thank you again for that. A lot of brilliant things have been shared with us. So, if your topic has already been raised, if you could just, you can just note that, but certainly, you don't need to repeat the entire, content. We already have it cataloged. And to that point, I want to make sure the public is keenly aware of the subject matter experts that are participating and really helping the board, and that's CT Mail and Associates and their experts. They have heard you, and I want to be clear on this. We are listening. We are actively looking and investigating what you are saying to us, and we are then reverting that back to the applicants for further investigation and clarity, and quite frankly, asking them to do better, right? We'll take a closer look at this. So, this is captured, I'll hold it up. I don't know if you can see it in my hands, but, CT Mail has put together, really, Catherine Sarah, 4 pages plus, denoting 18 or so items, everything from, the wildlife, the freshwater, the traffic implications, stormwater pollution prevention plan. We're not taking this lightly is really my message. We hear you. We're cataloging what you're submitting, what you're verbalizing, and this board is taking our role and responsibility extremely seriously, and not pushing back politely on the applicant to say, can we do better? Can you deploy further creativity? What can we do to diminish the impact and stay consistent with the character? So I just want to make that note. It's really keenly important, and I know this board takes it personally. So with that, I've touched on the public hearing rules, if you will, of engagement. We are looking, in terms of respect of everyone's time, we'd like to conclude by 9:15 this evening. So with 33 speakers at 3 minutes, you can do the math. So with that, I'll pause. I'll ask if there's any board members that wanted to add a comment or two or not. And then Ellen, and I apologize, Yuroshavsky, you are the first speaker, and we'll begin with you if no members have a comment or something to say.
I'd just like to add that we are indeed going through the list of speakers in the order in which people were asked, or people asked to be added to the list. So Just to note that, you know, when you put in your request, you're added to the list, and that's how we've scheduled it.
Thank you, Steve. Any other members?
It was very well said, David. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Catherine, you know, you're not a member of the board, but certainly as our, you know, our consultant, our subject matter expert, is there anything you wanted to note before we jump in?
No, I don't think there's time for me to elaborate, but just for the record, CT Mail did issue a review letter dated February 24th, and that is what Dave is referencing. I believe it has been provided to some who have asked for it, but again, that's all public record, and I did want to emphasize that, you know, many of CT Mail's comments do reflect what members of the public are saying. Just again, to reiterate to Dave that, you know, we are listening to the public for this project.
Thank you. And that was actually a question I see right here in the chat. So perfect. So hopefully, Mr. Goldman, that has answered your question. And I made the assumption that's a male, so I don't know if January is a male or female name, so I apologize. Okay, so Ellen, you're up. It's 7:16, and Helene, if you would, as timekeeper, and Ms. Hirovsky, your floor is yours.
Thank you. 3 minutes. I'm going to speak quickly. We live at
Okay.
76 Lower Sailor Mill, down the road from the planned overdevelopment. It is an overdevelopment. It's not reasonable. I grew up in a rural town in New Jersey. A similar suburban development entered our community, and here's what happened. People who moved in had suburban aspirations. They made demands. They complained there were no streetlights, traffic signs, or speed bumps. Our roads were too narrow, grass too high. This created community divisions. They insisted on changes and won. Our taxes increased, rules changed, streetlights and stop signs were added, and roads were eventually widened, speed bumps added. Our little town lost its character. We don't want that to happen here. Our united community has presented a compelling case that Dunn's planned overdevelopment would without doubt negatively affect the environment in numerous ways. We're glad to hear that you're saying you're treated seriously. We hope so. However, this planning board consistently appears to try to ignore or bypass all these detrimental effects. An informed opinion has it that our representatives, you, are prepared to do what Dunn wants, despite the law, despite the negative impact on the environment. As we continue to learn more about the details, it becomes even more disturbing. One example of what's been ignored is the full impact upon wildlife. The focus has been on Indiana bats, but Olive Bridge has bald eagles, and you haven't considered that. Nor have you considered the effect upon our trout streams. Clear cutting of trees impacts the temperature of the waters, and as you should know, that has a serious impact upon trout streams. These are just two of the examples of the obvious need for a positive declaration and a scientific, unbiased evaluation, independent. As we observe these hearings and review developer documents, the lack of transparency and sincerity has been disturbing. It's apparent they expect to barrel through this without necessary regard for the environmental impact. Most significantly, the covenants they submitted have attempted to ensure they won't be held liable for the negative consequences of significant environmental impact. They'll build and run. And in years to come, if you continue to deny the obvious need for SECRA's independent scientific assessment, what will happen when the town gets sued because of deficient water supply, contamination, sewer problems, or the worst fear, serious injury to a child on the road? Where was the planning board, and why didn't they seek the required independent assessment of impact on traffic, noise, safety, wildlife, water, sewer? What were they thinking? Were they in the pocket of overdevelopers? And who'll be liable to pay damages for what's foreseeable injury? The taxpayers? Our community has placed its faith and trust in the integrity and the diligence of this planning board to ensure that Olive remain a rural area where our families, our friends, our children and grandchildren can grow and prosper. It's beyond obvious that the science, the facts, and the law require further investigation of the potential environmental impact. It would be arbitrary to deny that. SECRA requires a positive declaration where there's a potential for impact on the environment. This is way beyond potential. It's demonstrative. It is obvious. We urge you to exercise the authority that the community has granted to you to require more investigation. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your comments. And thank you for staying to the time. That's very much appreciated, everything. So up next is Mr. Seacamp, and then on deck is Miss Birnbaum. So Mr. Seacamp, Kevin, you're up.
Hi, my name is Kevin Seacamp, and my address is 90 Franklin Road in Acworth, New York. I live southeast of the proposed development and just above the Bly-Pacama wetlands. I'm a builder and a craftsman. Thank you for this opportunity, by the way, to voice my opinion. I have lived in this area since 1974, and I've seen many changes on my dead-end road alone. I was the only full-time resident for many years, and now there are 6 houses with full-time residents. I remember dirt roads, mine included, and in the 1970s, I knew both Mrs. Iverson, Mrs. Iverson and Mr. Iverson. Mrs. Iverson sold goat's milk and eggs to my family. There were very few homes on the road then, and when the Iversons operated the farm, that was about all there was on that road. I've seen real estate developers who smell an opportunity to make money and completely disregard the impact on neighbors, roads, and the environment. What we are questioning is the impact it will have on all of us living here, the roads, the traffic, the wildlife, and the rural character that we all love. In the mid-1980s, I, along with a community of other concerned neighbors, stopped a proposed 28-home development on Rose Hill Road in the town of Marbletown, bordering Rochester. I understand that people will continue to move up here because this is a wonderful area, and those of us who live here are welcoming neighbors. We just don't think that the infrastructure of the area can handle a development of this size. There are blind curves, poor sight lines on both Ricky Road and Lower Solomil Road near Karen Ranucci's home. And our concern is evident. Are we just waiting for a terrible accident to happen on these roads? If you allow this development to go forward, you will be responsible for the decisions that are being made here. It is very clear that the infrastructure does not support the amount of traffic on these small rural roads. 13 homes designed by a corporation whose interests are not aligned with the character of the region. I was part of the Rondout Land Conservancy when it was first put together by Ira Stern. We put 33 acres of land into the new conservancy to protect the Bly-Pacama wetland. Call me a conservative, call me a naturalist, because I care about the environment I live in, for myself and for my neighbors, and for the wildlife that is so precious and abundant. Unfortunately, is all under increased pressure from these types of inappropriate developments. In a place where there are wild orchids, wild cranberries, bobcats and bears, and many other species, why would we not have limitations on these types of real estate overdevelopments? I don't doubt the competency of Frank Dunn and his team, but it is completely irrelevant. In this case, to build a cluster of homes too close to small rural roads with dangerous sight lines and curves is clearly irresponsibility. I'm not alone in my concern, and I hope that this board will be open to the concerns of the tax-paying residents of rural Olive. We stopped it in Marbletown after our representatives, or the representatives, because I live in Rochester, just over the line. They understood our concerns. These types of developments can be built close to Route 209 or Route 208, but not on the back roads like these, just to sell a view or just to cash in. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Seacamp, and your comments are acknowledged, respected, and thank you also for staying within the 3 minutes. Thank you very much. So up next is Mr. Poulos, Eric Poulos, and then on deck, if you will, is Miss Scarpati or Scarpati, Lynn
I think
Scarpati.
Nancy Birnbaum is next on my list.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. I'm sorry, Nancy, you're up, and then Eric is on deck. Thank you, David. So Nancy, you're up.
Okay, I'm Nancy Berenbaum, and my property is at 141 Lower Sailor Mill Road. As you can see in here, the Sailor Mill Road community is just that. It's a community. We've come together to respond to what is happening as a result of the Sailor Mill Farm development. Each of the property the property owners here represent lands that are connected, forming a rural and wild environment that allows us to live within a precious and fragile ecosystem, within a healthy natural setting that each of us wants to see protected and preserved. We are landowners who care deeply about the quality of life of this community. We care about preserving the health and continuance of the rural character and the natural environment that we consider dear. Our properties represent portions of an integrated ecosystem, and we know that the degradation of adjacent lands will negatively impact our own and the entire Salem Mill Road area. Last spring, without warning or approval, Mr. Dunn and Seakill began clear cutting the wild forest and mature trees of the Iverson farm. These actions constitute an unconscionable degradation of a magnificent portion of our neighborhood. That initial destruction was just the beginning. The shocking level of destruction of habitat and natural resources that we have already witnessed was done to build one property. Dunn and Seakill are proposing clear-cutting forest, disrupting and impacting protected wetlands, and destroying natural habitat to build out a total of 13 properties. There is overwhelming data pointing toward the negative and destructive impact of this proposed development. The Olive Town's own comprehensive plan has declared that the health of the rural and wild environment are of value and worthy of preservation and protection. It states that preserving the rural and natural character of the town is a priority. The Sailor Mill Farm proposal flagrantly disregards the stated goals and objectives made by the Town of Olive's comprehensive plan, those of preserving the scenic and natural landscape and the rural character of the town. The scale of this project clearly threatens our water, our air quality, our forests and animals, and the overall health of our rural and natural environment. We are asking you to issue a positive declaration in order that the Sailor Mill Farm development can become a harmonious addition to the neighborhood.
Ms. Berenbaum, can you wrap it up, please? I apologize.
Yes. We just implore you to issue a positive declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Poulos, Eric Poulos, you're up next. And then is on deck is Miss Scarpati Lynn, but we don't see her in attendance. So if you're here, you're next after Mr. Poulos. So Eric, you're up.
Okay. Thank you. I want to thank the Planning Commission. This is really a good example of democracy in action, and hopefully our voices will be heard. I want to speak to two things. One is on the EAF form about noise. I live at 76 Sailor Mill Road, and I will tell you that during the summer, while the construction was going on, the trucks going back and forth was a tremendous noise and disturbance. I can only imagine with 12 more houses being built for the next 5 years, what that noise will be like. It will just be intolerable. And it will not be a quiet country road, but it will be like a 4-lane highway. The amount of trucks that'll be used for construction, for delivery, the cars, the homeowners, which I don't blame them for having cars, but it will completely change the character of this road and this community. And for no reason. There is no reason to have 13 massive houses on a road that is only 2 miles long. I want to bring up a final point, and hopefully I'll have time, because various speakers today and last time spoke about community, and I'm concerned. Last time we had over 100 people. Today there are, 62? And I'm concerned that people are losing faith, that they feel their voice is not being heard, that we complain, we have constructive suggestions, and yet there's a feeling that it's not being heard, that it's not being considered, and that after all, what is a community? It's not buildings, it's not roads, it's not street signs, it's people. And we are the community. This is the community speaking. And the community has spoken and said that we are very concerned about what will happen to traffic, wildlife, noise, and various other things. And we really want to be heard and considered because this affects our lives. There is no point to having 5 years of traffic, 5 years of construction, 5 years of deliveries on a road that is 2 miles long and I don't know, about 13 feet wide. If
Thank you,
there's
Mr.
ever a truck that comes down the road, I've got to pull aside because a truck and a car cannot fit on this road. And now you're talking about 5 years of trucks. It will change us. With COVID, a lot of us are now working at home.
Yep.
We're here. We're working remotely.
We hear you,
And-
Mr. Poulos. If you could just conclude your comments, please.
Absolutely. Thank you for allowing me this. With COVID, we're home. So a lot more people are on the road walking. We don't have a park. There's no commons. Our common social area is to walk on the road. And if for 5 years we have to dodge trucks, it will completely change the character and our quality of life. So especially on the
Thank you.
13 item of the form pertaining to noise and 15 about traffic, I'd ask you to give a positive rating. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Poulos, thank you for your comments. They've been noted.
You're welcome.
So I understand that Ms. Scarpati is here. Lynn, the floor is yours for 3 minutes. And again, I just remind you, we're trying to give some latitude, but you know, as an engineer, if we give everybody an extra 30 seconds, you can do the math. It's exponential. So if you would kindly just keep it to the 3 minutes, we're trying to be polite. Please, Ms. Scarpati.
Sorry, what name is she under? I don't see her to unmute her.
I don't know. Is she here? I
She
haven't-
didn't respond to me.
Okay. There was a chat. Well, then we'll skip over her politely, and if she does come back, we'll give her the floor. So Mr. McGilvery, Mr. Doug McGilvery, the floor is yours for 3 minutes. Is Douglas?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
Yep, go ahead. The floor
Go
is
ahead.
yours, sir.
You got me?
Yes,
Okay, sorry.
no worries.
Okay, my wife and I, sorry. My wife and I live at 377 Upper Salem Mill Road, which is not far through the woods from the proposed project. My comments are concerning the EAF Part 2, question 18, consistency with community character, items E and F. As I stated in a recent letter to the board, the rural nature of this area of Olive is not due to happenstance. In particular, families who own land in and adjacent to the Sailor Mill Loop have held an unwavering desire to keep development to a minimum, privately preserving the natural environment that surrounds us. This has been going on over many decades. Farms have been kept intact and are passed on to family members and other neighbors. Many parcels range from 10 to 50 acres in size. I live in a 100-acre subdivision that was approved in 1988, which has been partially pieced back together over the years. As an example, the 49-acre Graceway portion was approved for 8 building lots. We have reduced that to 4 home sites. Over and over again, landowners here have resisted entreaties from developers to sell their acreage while continuing to pay their rising tax bills. One of the oldest families in the area holds a whopping 655 acres that they refuse to subdivide. Their annual taxes top 40 grand. The point of all this is that our community is not suburban and has been kept that way on purpose. This project is presented as an intrusion on the character of our community and our way of life. These developers are attempting to rob us of our rural character solely for their own profit. Their plan does nothing to contribute to or enhance our community. Their plan will only irredeemably scar our lands and diminish our day-to-day enjoyment of this neighborhood. The development of this land should not be at the whim of an outside production builder. That choice should be at the discretion of the people and community. As members of this community, we are the ones who should be setting the standard. I respectfully request that the planning board check yes to question 18 and issue a positive declaration to further study the damaging aspects of this project. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you for your comments. And I see some applause, so your neighbors do as well. So thank you very much. Next, Mr. Chris Zumtobel, and then followed by, we just put a chat, but we don't know if Miss Helen Kirulf is in attendance, Kierulf. But if she's not in attendance, then John Berenbaum, you would be up after Mr. Zumtobel. So Mr. Chris Zumtobel, you're up. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Chris Zumtobel. My partner Nina and I have been renovating the old farmhouse at 441 Upper Sailor Mill Road. We've been doing all the work ourselves with the help of friends and family. And as some of you may know, sadly, we had a fire last night, and we lost our beautiful old barn that was across the street from our home. So I just want to take this moment to say thank you to all of you who sent out the messages and the support. And I just want to say that I am sorry for the impact on everyone. It's been a really, really emotional and sad day around here. An unlikely blessing of this property has been the fact that it spans both sides of the road. Our main home being on the west side of Upper Sailor, and our garages and our outbuildings on the east side. This means with every project, we're constantly forgetting something on one side or the other and walking back and forth, most of the time bumping into a neighbor along the way. Neighbors are so happy to see someone has moved into this home that's sat empty for more than 3 years, and we're really grateful for all the advice, laughs, and support we've gotten. These are neighbors who are happy to know that this farmland will stay farmland, and they know to slow down when our chickens are crossing the road. But thanks to this new development, we're getting a good introduction to the downsides of our proximity to the road. These trucks rip down our road. They don't wave and they don't slow down for our chickens. More than that, I fear for our own safety and the safety of our home and buildings, which are not set far off the road and were designed with the small farming community in mind. We are relative newcomers here, but we are in love with Olive Bridge, and we feel incredibly lucky to live in such a beautiful place. We want to share our lovely town with others, and we're not opposed to development. We just think the scale of this one is nothing but a money grab, and that our community deserves a fair and in-depth assessment of the traffic and the environmental impact. I'm grateful to the board for hearing us out, and I appreciate the work you all do to keep Olive thriving, rural, and the place we love to call home. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris, and was not aware of the fire, so sorry for the tragedy. So we have not heard from Ms. Kirulf, Helen Kirulf. Are you in attendance? Okay, so Mr. John Berenbaum, the floor is yours, sir. And then up next is Nina Stender. Nina Stender would be after Mr. Berenbaum. John, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Nancy's, who just spoke earlier, husband at 141 Lower Sailor Road. I'm a lawyer. I don't practice land use law. I have no expertise in that area of law, but I do have a perspective in reviewing some of the documents that have been submitted and the testimony, and I just wanted to give you some of my thoughts. The first is there's a very low threshold for issuing a negative declaration. It's the threshold is whether the development may include the potential for at least one significant environmental effect. Essentially, there has to be a sense of certainty that this development won't damage the environment to not issue a negative declaration and to let the development go through without an independent analysis. I think the evidence is clear that there's at the very least the potential of serious environmental damage. Second point, it's only to Olive's benefit to issue a positive declaration. As you know, a positive declaration triggers a comprehensive environmental analysis that the town by itself likely doesn't have the resources for. There are a whole host of government agencies and county governmental units that will be brought in to do this analysis and have expertise in their respective areas, which the town just doesn't have. Another advantage of the environmental impact statement being done is that excuse me, the planning board can order the developer to give alternatives and less damaging alternatives. At this stage, there's been talk of that the developers are hearing what we all have to say, but there's no obligation. Only 7 seconds. Oh, I have a lot more to say. I guess I'll have to submit written comments.
Well, that's very kind of you, Mr. Barenbaum, for respecting the time limit. And certainly we have been reviewing all of the emails as demonstrated early on. CT Mail is acting upon them as appropriate. So thank you for your comments.
Okay, if no one wants to talk at some point and wants to give me more time, I'm up for it.
Okay, if someone wants to yield, we'll certainly allow that. So Miss Nina Stender, Miss Stender, are you in attendance? I heard something. Is Nina in attendance? Nina Stender?
I just asked her to unmute. She
Thank you,
should
David.
be able to. Let me do it again in case it didn't go through. There we go.
Hi, I'm Nina Stender. I live at 441 Upper Sailor Mill Road. My family purchased this property last year, and with my partner Chris and a few friends, we've been working to restore the farmhouse and the outbuildings as well. We were attracted to Olive because it's a rural community, and we came in knowing that, prioritizing preserving that rural character. We have more than 40 acres of forested land on our property, which we plan to keep that way, and love the diversity of trees and wildlife and care deeply about protecting the environment and ecosystems here. The back of our property bumps into the Sailor Mill farm, and we've already noticed a lot more hawk activity around our chickens and fear that that is from all the clear cutting that has been already done on behalf of the development, which we expect will only increase exponentially if these 13 houses are all built. I don't want to be too repetitive since many of my neighbors have spoken to the various issues at play here, but I really want to emphasize that there are too many open questions and concerns about these environmental and traffic issues, and such a development of this scale would be a 50% increase on a quarter-mile segment of the road. So we need an environmental impact statement to truly understand what the impacts will be on water, traffic, environmental ecosystems, and a lot more before we move forward. As a newcomer myself, I'm so grateful to the community and all our neighbors for being so welcoming, and of course, so kind and supportive today on this challenging day. And I'm not opposed at all to newcomers and developments. However, I believe that the development has to be responsible and work to preserve the existing character of the community. So thank you to everyone who is here to share their experiences, and thank you to the board for taking seriously all of our input. Don't know if I have any remaining time, but happy to yield it to John if I do.
Well, it's more of just, kind of all or nothing. So thank you, Ms. Stender. Appreciate your comments. So we did not see a Mr. Rick Harrison in attendance, but he is up next. Mr. Rick Harrison, the floor is yours if you're here. And then on deck is Miss Christine Newman. So Rick Harrison, are you in attendance? Okay.
I didn't see him anywhere.
Okay. Miss Christine Newman, the floor is yours.
All right, I'm unmuting. Wow, I didn't expect to be here so quickly. Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Let me get myself, I guess you want to see me too. All right. Hi.
It's not a requirement, but nice sweater.
Thank you. LL Bean, a rural out. We are happy owners of a house on Upper Sailor Mill Road, and we're relatively new. And anyway, let me get going here. I wrote it down. I strongly urge that this proposed development be scrutinized more thoroughly by impartial experts who will ensure that the environmental impacts are mitigated as much as possible. There are many concerns. I want to focus on the potential negative consequences to the water supply, such as degradation of Rochester Creek and contamination of the principal aquifer. The proposed 13 home site and its 13 septic systems will abut the Pacama Vlai, a wetland of local, regional, and state significance. According to the full environmental assessment form, numbers 3, impacts on surface water, 4, groundwater, and 5, flooding, all contain multiple areas of concern that at the very least need to be further examined. I urge the board to adopt a positive declaration on this project. It behooves us all as citizens of this beautiful, relatively unspoiled corner of the world to do what we can to minimize potential future environmental damage. Our grandchildren will appreciate it. Thank you. And I yield all my other seconds to John Berenbaum.
I see applause as well. So thank you, Ms. Newman, for your comments. So next, again, we'll just do a quick, Mr. Norman Barron, are you in attendance? We haven't seen you, Mr. Norman Barron.
Order, people are not showing up.
Okay, so then Mr. Richard Strollman, the floor is yours, Mr. Richard Strollman. And then on deck, to try and avoid any surprises, Miss Lenora Weiner would be up next after Mr. Strollman. So Mr. Strollman and then Miss Weiner, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, I expect, can you hear me?
I can hear someone.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you, yes, okay.
We have two things on. Okay, well, I'm Richard Stolman, and I'm the husband of Christine Newman, who just spoke. I'll do what she did and read. As a relatively new resident of the county, I defer to others who know far, far more than I do about what's possible here and what's desirable. There are some pretty darn knowledgeable and caring folks in this meeting. I've learned much from those I've met and those I've listened to at this and the last meeting. New, I can't say anything about the area that someone else hasn't mentioned, but I'm speaking because I do have a relevant experience that is all that this vividly reminds me of. I grew up in an area in Delaware that was rural but near a beach resort, kind of like here, the Catskills Reserve in New York City. We are near Rehoboth Beach, and this is a destination about 2.5 hours from Washington, D.C., like here in New York. We were amongst multiple small towns just down from the beach. In less than a generation, our area was transformed in a way none of us who saw it or lived it could have imagined. Like here, development decisions were made individually and were clearly affected by nearby Rehoboth and nearby Washington. As more and more folks from Washington wanted a home in Rehoboth, it expanded out our way. Underused farmland and then used farmland started to get developed. Individually, decisions made regarding the properties and lots seemed tolerable and manageable, but it became clear too late and that cumulatively they were not. Stunning, within a generation, the area became crowded, dense, commercial. It became a completely different world. How the hell did this happen? So that's what I'm reminded of. That's my filter. Individually, seemingly tolerable decisions result in a serious, qualitatively different area. Primacy has been given to the voice of local developers over local residents. Local development became Toll Brothers developments. If here it is okay for this developer to overbuild, why not the next one, and then the next one, and on and on. It's pretty hard to impossible to reverse these things. The other day, as I often do, I was walking by Mill Pond and was trying to imagine the surrounding land with the same density as the housing project up the road. It gave a completely different feel to the pond, and not a good one. No one staying in the neighborhood would do that to themselves. By extension of what the developer is doing further up Lower Sawmill Road, it could easily happen. The property around the pond could also possibly come on the market. Why not continue the same density? I hugely admire folks here looking at change and the impact of change. People are working hard at preserving the character of an area that they have grown up in and love or are new to and love. Just recognizing that character before losing it is a hard and wondrous thing. Again, I look back at Delaware. We lost what we had before we realized what it was. People are putting in long hours to not let that happen here. Better that than nostalgically looking back and regretting what's gone. The hours and concerns certainly merit consideration. Thankfully, as town planners, you will give this long hours and thoughtfulness a chance. Thank you. I've listened in a few meetings and appreciate your care and attention. I certainly don't want to see anything irreversible done here and feel pretty comfortable that you don't either. Best to you all in these very strange times. I guess that I'm talking specifically about the terms of the FEA form as moderate to large impact on 17A, B, and maybe C and D, and also 18E and F. That's it. Did I get in under 3 minutes?
So, Mr. Stolman, thank you very much for your comments, and thank you for rushing at the end. It's very much appreciated.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So, Miss Weiner, you're up, and then we have a duo I have on the list here, a Miss Hughes and a Miss Case. You would be after Miss Weiner. So, Lenore, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am speaking on behalf of my partner, Jerry Potkin, and myself, and we live on Upper Sailor Mill Road, and we would like to make the following points. First, we want to thank the planning board. We know you are volunteers and put a lot of time into your roles in addition to your day jobs. We know you have been attentive to the community and are doing your best to be fair, and we appreciate that. Second, at the last planning board hearing, Frank Dunn obviously summoned people to attest to his good character. But character is not at issue here, nor are his past accomplishments as a builder. What's at issue here is the density of this proposal and its negative impacts on the environment and character of this very special community, impacts of which will endure long after the construction vehicles leave. Third, from the very beginning of this process, Mr. Sorbellini, you astutely noted that the density of this development needed to be reconsidered. You suggested the developers come back with a better plan, but they ignored the planning board's request, which to us is disrespectful of your charge. We agree with you that perhaps a less dense plan would mitigate many of the negative effects. Fourth, we do not believe that CT Mail is serving us, the community, well, because we are their clients, as the planning board is representative of the community. For starters, they indicated both verbally and non-verbally that our community members somehow had to be managed and not heard. And that attitude is anathema to the democratic process. In talking about traffic issues, the suggestion of putting a few feet of bike lane in front of the development is quite honestly laughable. As if that would address the multitude of environmental and traffic impacts both independent experts and community members have raised. And speaking of traffic, let's be clear. We are not talking only about residential traffic, but about construction vehicles and a multitude of ongoing services, including propane trucks, landscapers, lawn service, oil deliveries, garbage service, snow plows, Amazon package delivery, caretakers, house cleaners, pool cleaners. You get the picture. Today we had a really, really heartbreaking fire on this road, and the entire road had to be taken over by fire trucks and utility trucks. And imagine if we have 13 more houses that require emergency services. Finally, we must invoke one neighbor who is no longer with us. His name is John Burrows. He's a naturalist and a teacher who lived here a long time ago. There's a plaque in honor of him on Mill Road near the Olive Fire Department. He wrote, "To find the air and the water exhilarating, to be refreshed by a morning walk or an evening saunter, to be elated over a bird's nest or a wildflower in spring. The most precious things of life are near at hand, without money and without price." So we say to you, our Olive Planning Board, you are the stewards of these precious things. The secret rules are clear. It would fly in the face of evidence, reason, and the law to do anything but issue a positive declaration at this time. Thank you.
You're muted, Dave.
Thank you for that. Appreciate your comments and the reading from Mr. Burrows. As I've noted, Ms. Hughes and Ms. Case, the floor is yours. Up next, we have Mr. Mandel and Ms. Como, but we don't see them in attendance. So There's quite a few people in a row that we don't see in attendance. So if that's the case, following Ms. Hughes and Ms. Case, we would have Ms. Yaffe, Anna Rice Yaffe. So the floor is yours, Ms. Hughes and Case.
Great, thank you. My
You're
name is Hope Hughes and my current address is 673 Hurley Avenue. This is our third home in 20 years in this magnificent Ulster County. My wife Kathy and I are here in support of Frank Dunn and the Sea-Kill team. We met with and worked with Frank when we were one of the first families to become part of the Mill Rock community, which we lived in for 9 years. I also grew up in Kentucky on a farm, and so I have a little bit of experience there from a rural community perspective. So working with Frank and the team, we have firsthand knowledge and experience of living in and building a community within the Rochester community. At last month's public hearing, I listened to everyone as they spoke passionately about Olive Bridge. I tried to listen with an open mind to understand the many different perspectives that were shared as well as the concerns. Upon reflection, I can see how one could be threatened or afraid of what they don't know. This is the first thing that stands in the way of any major change or event, such as the establishment of a new community. Some examples include the events leading up to a political election or a virus that keeps hanging on. The unknown generates fear and angst and stress. This is the very reason that every town in this country, in every state and county has its own set of laws, rules, and regulations around land use. These laws are in fact in place to deal with changes that eventually come to many communities. They actually provide clarity and facts around zoning and land use so people will know what will happen and what might not happen. In these situations, there is also concern for what will be taken away rather than what might be improved or added to the community. Some folks are concerned that this will perhaps set the standard for future development, which I could offer would be good news. Why? Because in actuality, this project could be considered underdeveloped. I know many of you have said overdeveloped, but let's look at the plans that were built with respect to the regulations and laws that are in place. Of the 64 acres, each lot is a minimum of 3 acres. The largest lot size is 10 acres, and the average lot is 5 acres, which is 5 times the zoning requirements. Adding further protection for the community, there are conservation requirements. 35 of the 64 acres are protected, meaning no one can even touch that land. There are restrictive covenants, which has been put into place to protect the community, and some examples include preventing future subdivision if an owner has less than 8 acres. I want to trust the planning board to make the right decision for the community and appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for staying within the time limit. It's greatly appreciated, as I've shared. So thank you, Ms. Hughes. So I'm just going to take a moment here. I have 4 folks in a row that we don't see in attendance. So I'm just going to read them and take a pause. So Mr. Matt Mendel and Amy Como, are you in attendance? Mr. George Cowrie with a K, or Coury maybe, K-O-U-R-Y. Mr. George Coury, are you in attendance? Mr. Mike Powell, Mr. Mike Powell. I've got one more than Miss Yaffe, you'll be up. And then a Michelle Brandt, a Miss Brandt, B-R-A-N-D-T. Are you in attendance to speak? Okay, so it's 7:59. I will give the floor to Miss Anna Rice Yaffe. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Hi. So I'm not a lawyer. And I guess the way that I became aware of what was happening here is on one of my daily walks. I passed the Sailorman property, which I always do, and have been loving it for so long, and saw that the house was bulldozed. And so I started reaching out to my community to find out what was going on. And when I heard that there was 14 houses going in, I was like, that's obviously not true because that could never happen. That doesn't even make sense. And so then I started coming to these meetings, and as the speakers before me just said, you're right, there are these laws that are in place, and I'm not totally fluent in those laws. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but there are laws that are in place, and that's why we're at this meeting. I keep hearing the developer and people that represent him say that there's somehow this entitlement that he has to put a house on every one of these 64 acres. And that's clearly just not true. The reason we come to these planning board meetings is to see what is appropriate, what's appropriate for the community, what's appropriate for traffic, what's appropriate for the environment. And I remember somebody here said that he should come back to us with a less dense proposition, and that hasn't happened. And then I'm hearing that he's offering up all these protections, but that's because a lot of that land just isn't buildable. And I read the covenant, and the covenant says that these protections are either enforced by the town of Olive, or if the town of Olive can't enforce them, then maybe the neighbors can sue each other. And that just feels to me like that's not real protection. That's not forever wild, which is what the developer told us in an earlier meeting, that these lands were going to be protected forever wild. I think that the community is saying over and over that we're really concerned about this. I walk those streets all the time. And this summer, me and my kids were run off the road multiple times by construction trucks, by stone trucks, by logging trucks. It's a real concern. And I also just want to say that I do believe, like somebody from the board said, that the character of a community is fluid, right? Families get bigger, they get smaller, people move in, they move out. And that's an evolution, right? That's something natural that happens. But what we're looking at here is 14 houses put in where there was one. And that's not an evolution. That's a radical change that is going to have a major impact no matter how you look at it. And I'll end there because I saw the little clock go up.
Well, that's
Thank
very
you.
kind of you, and thank you for your comments and contributions. So next we have a Mr. Tuckman. We don't see you in attendance. Is there a Mr. Tuckman here to speak? And Mr. David Yaff, you're up next if Mr. Tuckman doesn't arrive. Okay, so the floor will be Mr. David Yaff, and then next is Mr. Todd Scursi, S-C-U-R-C-I. So David, the floor is yours. Is David here? Maybe unmute? Someone said.
I'm trying to unmute him, but
yes.
There he goes.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman Sorbellini and members of the board. Thank you. My name is David Yaffe, and I have lived in the neighborhood of the proposed project with my family for 15 years, actually more than 15 years. The issue that this board is faced with determining at this point in time is whether the proposal, quote, may include the potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact. That is the law of the state of New York. That's 6 NYCRR 617.7A1. If this board determines that the proposed project may include such a potential, then it is obligated under the law of the state of New York to require the preparation of an environmental impact statement known as an EIS for the proposed action. That document is then subject to town, community, and expert hearings, review, and comment, all with the goal of mitigating the adverse impacts on the environment to the maximum extent practicable. Chairman Sorbellini indicated at the opening of tonight's hearing that the board is very concerned about what we can do to diminish the impact. Those were the words that I heard. The question of what we can do to diminish the impact is exactly what takes place during and within the EIS review process. It is not properly part of a horse trading process with the developer to avoid or evade the mandatory requirements of an EIS. I'm not going to repeat the statements and comments of my many neighbors and our attorney, Emily Svensson, or our planner, Ted Fink, which demonstrate and confirm the multitude of potential significant adverse environmental impacts of this project upon the character of the neighborhood, the aesthetic resources, the change and intensity of use of this property, the removal of large quantities of vegetation, all of which are signifiers of significant adverse impacts. But I'm sure that I don't need to repeat all of that. What I wanted to do was to speak to you based on my own professional experience as an attorney who has litigated and advised clients with respect to SECRA and land use cases for upwards of 25 years. It is my considered view that there is no rational way for this board to conclude anything other than that this proposed project may, in fact, will have significant adverse impacts on the environment. Therefore, I respectfully submit that it is the obligation of this board, in compliance with the requirements of law, to issue a positive declaration and require the preparation of an environmental impact statement.
Thank you, Mr. Yaffe.
And I say this as
If you
someone,
could just wrap it up, please.
yes, and I say this as someone who represents, defends, and advises villages and towns in suburban and rural communities in New York, as someone who represents developers of projects with respect to compliance with the law, and as someone who has represented neighbors or building owners next door to projects that are not complying. Therefore,
Thank you,
I
Mr. Yaffe. Your
urge you.
time is up, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. So up next is Mr. Todd Scursy, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. And then on deck, if you will, is Mr. Art Wislowski, and I understand you're with someone, Mr. Devon or Miss Devon as well. So Todd, the floor is yours, Mr. Scursy.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Todd Scursy. My wife Annie and I bought our house on Sailor Mill about 2 years ago. We're located at 368 Upper. So unfortunately, given the degree of clear cutting to date, we expect to be able to see the southwestern most home behind us through what right now is just woods. Our home is situated downstream on the Rochester Creek, and we are nervous about the increased runoff and environmental impacts of that from the development. But before I raise our biggest concern to the board, I do feel compelled to convey how friendly and how helpful and how welcoming our neighbors have been on this Sailor Mill loop since we bought here, which for us has really been the most important characteristic of becoming part of this community. And the reason I'm speaking to this is because on the February 16th meeting, when Olive residents were first permitted to speak, I felt like I was in some sort of twilight zone where residents of other communities were given priority in the speaking order, made statements that were distinctly untrue, and they were often given 6 to 7 minutes of speaking time to disparage this community and our very real and legitimate concerns. So it's not lost on me or any of us really that we're now only being allotted 3 minutes or half of the speaking time granted to outside residents to bring to your attention our concerns if this development were to move forward in its current proposed form. For my wife and I, it's our well. What is the impact of drilling 13 wells and filling up pools, watering lawns, et cetera, of this development? And will the aquifer be able to handle that? Will I have to dig our well deeper? And who's going to pay for that? The possibility of this being an issue is not a remote possibility. In fact, you don't even have to look that far for the precedent of this issue, because the closest development to Sailor Mill is Mill Rock, which is only 300 meters from our loop. And from what I understand, the same builder ran into this exact issue where the plan for a development of some number of homes had to be reduced because the aquifer could not accommodate. So in closing, please hear us out as a welcoming community, but a community that has real and legitimate concerns about the impact that this development will have. It's imperative that the town's due diligence required to ensure the impacts are not negative ones is both comprehensive and unbiased. So thank you.
So next up, we have Mr. Wiskowski. Is Mr. Wiskowski in attendance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So, I just wanted to say, as a steward of this area of, more than 400 acres in this community, I can go on and on about a lot of the wildlife and the little tree frogs and salamanders and the wildlife in the area. And I know a lot of this stuff has been spoken about, but I thought this morning, that I wanted to say that this company is a professional building company, and yet they circumvented all the permits. They did this all illegally. So it made me start to think, what is their motive? Of course we know it's money, but my problem is, what if this development, if this thing was off the road? What if we couldn't see what they were doing? What kind of stuff would they be doing? And that's my problem with this. I mean, whether you want to call it an LLC or a corporation taking over for money or whatever you want to call it. But this is in our community, and it's sort of like, I don't know the words, but anyway, it's disregarding. They're the builders. They're supposed to get permits, and they didn't. They didn't even have silt fence. I mean, this is a vagrant violation of the whole process, and they're in the business. They should be banned. They should not even be allowed to build again in Olive or in the county for doing this. And that's how I feel. And that's all I really need to say, because it stands for itself. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a Mr. Peter Romeo in attendance? We haven't seen your name on the screen. Okay. Next up is Mr. David Kerfurst. David Kerfurst, you're up next. And then David Ettinger, just before Mr. Kerfurst speaks. I've got Mr. Devin Seacamp, but I think that's who just spoke, so I'm a little confused.
No, I'm Miss Devin Seacamp.
Okay, all right, so you're up next. Okay, got it. Thank you. David, the floor is yours. David Kerfurst.
Thank you. Yep, I'm David. I live at 41 Lower Saller, right at that hairpin turn that we talked about a lot last meeting. And I think it's a good place to start because even under really normal circumstances, it's a very scary and dangerous place to cross the road, whether we're going to our mailbox right there or our garden or our barn. We've already had several encounters with traffic there, and I can just only dread what the future of that's going to be with more development and more traffic. And so I think everyone has really laid out articulately what our concerns are as a community and echo all of that. And I'm just here to maybe offer a perspective as what it's been like to be a newcomer here in Olive. I've just been here for 1 year now, and I absolutely adore it. I spent summers coming upstate and with my fiance and a couple of friends who are now living in the area. We've decided we really want to stay here permanently. We want to make our life here. And part of that has been because our neighbors are so welcoming. They've been teaching us so much about the land, how to steward it, how to keep things going and thriving for future newcomers and future generations. And it's really important to us to be mindful and thoughtful neighbors. And I think this is a great opportunity to say, We're not in a fight here between developers and neighbors or between planning board. We all clearly love this area, which is so evident from hearing everyone speak passionately and everyone dedicating their time to the planning board clearly love this area too. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to say we do welcome newcomers, we do welcome change, but they have to do it with the right intentions. And that intention is building our community and improving it. And I think we have to be very seriously questioning this development and scrutinizing it. And just would say that even to an untrained eye like mine, we can see all the problems with this development. And I could see that even with a very thoughtful ecological plan going forward, it would be very hard to sway me that there is not going to be irreparable damage done to all the things that we love about this land, which is the air, the water, the soil, the plant life, the animals. It gives us so much joy being up here, and seeing all that be damaged and put under severe strain just like would break all of our hearts who have moved up here. And so I would just say that here's our opportunity. Here's our opportunity to do something different and to say thank you to this land that's given us so much, given us all our homes here. And let's do things in a sustainable way. And this is how we show that we care about Olive and that we love it. So thank you all.
And thank you for your comments. So Ms. Devin Seekamp, you're up again.
So I would like to second what first of all, my brother Kevin previously stated and what Art Waslowski just stated. And I yield my time to John Berenbaum. Is that?
Right, well, they're not doing that, but okay.
No, certainly if she wants to give her entire time, you can have the slot for sure. I just didn't want to piecemeal a minute here and there. We're just not built for that. So if you wanted 3 minutes, go ahead. Mr. Berenbaum, did you want to take the 3 minutes?
He has to unmute.
The fellow attorneys made some of the points I was going to make, but I just want to make two additional points. As Mr. Yaffe said, it's not the role of the planning board to seek what mitigation efforts the developer can make. The mitigation efforts that the developer has proposed have been, in the first place, shown to be unenforceable and inadequate. But even more to the point, this planning board is not to consider those. And there's case law that says if the planning board considers the mitigation efforts as part of the process of issuing a negative declaration, in considering those mitigation efforts, it's inherent, and I'm quoting now, it's an inherent acknowledgement that there may be a potential of significant environmental impact. And then the only other point that I wanted to say is that, again, from reviewing the case law, this is new to me, it seems very clear that this is not going to end with just a negative declaration. I think there's going to be litigation here. And from my analysis, and I yield to Mr. Yaffe, who's an expert in this field, it seems likely that it will be, the challengers will be successful, it will be costly, and it won't do any good for the developers either to have to be enjoined to stop their development in the midst of the process. So those are the points I wanted to make, and thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you, Mr. Berenbaum. So with that, up next is Mr. Charles Creasy, followed by Mr. Peter Castro. So Mr. Peter Castro, you would be after Mr. Charles Creasy. So Charles, the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, board, and thanks for the time. My name is Charles Creasy. My wife, Rosie, and I were both born, raised, and worked in this area our entire lives. And for the last 40 years, we have lived just above the Saddler Mill farm area, and we pay Onteora school taxes. We just want to add our support to all the concerned neighbors in this great community we live in, and the issues they have raised concerning the environmental, visual, community disrupting impacts this large project will have on our homes and lifestyle. We are very concerned with the large amount of wells that will be going in just below us in such a relatively small space, and urge the planning board to protect us in every way they can. The project planners will eventually leave, and this community will be stuck with the possible side effects a large project like this can bring. But the real 800-pound gorilla in the room, of course, is this huge scope and scale of this development. It is huge and quite frankly scares us. I reach out to Frank Dunn's compassion for us and urge him to scale back the number of homes. It would solve so much. Less environmental impacts, less water usage, less clear cuttings to get a look at Mombax and High Point and so on. And it also show that the project is sensitive to our community. I too was raised on a farm, drove tractor at age 12 on Beehive Road in the town of Rochester. My mom, Elizabeth Chrissy, and Frank Dunn's mom were best of friends and would together travel through the central New York, searching for possible farmhands to work on our farms. I am humbly asking Frank and the board to reconsider this massive size of this project and reduce it to the size that respects the surrounding community and to the memory of the farm itself of yesterday. Thank you, board.
Mr. Christie, thank you. Apologize for mispronouncing your last name, not intentional.
That's fine.
So Mr. Peter Castro, you are, the floor is yours, and then followed by Miss Judith Turkle. Judith, you would be after Mr. Castro. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm the father of 4-year-old twin boys who are quite popular in our community. And at the risk of incurring the combustible wrath of some of Mr. Dunn's supporters per our last forum, we're proud weekenders and love every minute of having 2 homes. I hope that doesn't work against me with what I'm about to say. We escaped to this heavenly place because of the bustle in New York for kids is very detrimental, especially when you consider one of our favorite pastimes, and that is exploring nature. So we come here and we take our boys for long walks, doing the beautiful loop that runs from Upper to Lower Sailor Mill Roads. I shudder to think what these walks will now become. Mind you, I'm not even talking about the inevitable noise and dust that awaits us over the next 5 years. On a more practical and terrifying scale, I'm concerned about the exponential increase in danger that we'll suddenly face. It's a simple matter of arithmetic, people. Doubling the traffic on such a short stretch makes it unsafe for kids, pets, and adults alike. Cars, trucks, supersized truck vehicles whizzing by for the next 5 years is a tragedy waiting to happen. And I'm not being dramatic here. And I want to put that into the official record so no one says that this was never a concern or it was never voiced. But let's stay on the topic of arithmetic. Besides the egregious growth in traffic, our wells will surely be affected if not depleted. There will be 13 new houses on acreage that's way too small. How is this even a debate? Would it be a debate if I suddenly said to Frank Dunn, hey, Frank, how's about 45 new people moving into your home? Don't worry, there's plenty of space and you won't even notice them when you're making coffee in the morning. With respect, it is the ethical and moral duty of this board to examine in detail the ramifications of this project. Why hasn't there been a serious discussion of hiring an impartial hydrogeologist, for example, or an expert in traffic congestion and what that does to communities, or someone who can speak to the damage done to the flora and fauna? And why are we beholden to the naked subjectivity of CT mail? Frankly, it defies logic and the rule of law to get through this process. I put on hold for a positive declaration. I implore you board members, and I'm wrapping it up. I implore you board members, please don't turn this into a Soviet trial where the verdict is a foregone conclusion. You're supposed to have our best interests in mind. Real lives are being affected for perpetuity, all because of the gluttony of one man. 13 houses, really? Where does it end? Why not open a nightclub on Brown Road? Sounds like a great idea. The amount of development borders on the satirical. Mr. Dunn's impunity is almost admirable if it weren't so destructive. Please consider how this will forever change this community. All it takes is one concern, And that's why I'm humbly asking you, the board members, to rule for a positive declaration under SECRA law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. So I just want to, there were some audio issues while you were reading, so I don't know if anybody else experienced it, but you may want to submit your comments in writing as well. I heard most of it, but if you want to submit an email as well, that would be great.
How much?
Miss Judith Turkle is up next, and I would just remind the audience, please, the public, we're a community, and per the rules, like if we just can stay out of the arena of insults, please, just the facts, if you will. I recognize it's a passionate topic, but please, if you would, thank you. So Ms. Turkle, the floor is yours, and then Mr. Andy Simon, you're next.
Hey, can you all hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Judith Turkell. For 30 years, Jennifer Costley and I have owned our home here in Crumville on Beaver Lake Road, just immediately northwest of Upper Cellar Mill Road. This home is our permanent residence. We understand that there will always be some kind of development in this area, and we accept that as necessary and inevitable. In the years that we have been here, we have seen new houses built, even on our own quiet dead-end road, and have welcomed our new neighbors. I say this so that it's clear I'm not anti-development. However, from what I've learned about this project, it is absolutely out of scale and character with the area, for the reasons that others have spoken to will have a devastating impact on the wildlife, the environment, our enjoyment of the area, and our safety. For many years, a regular walk we take with our dogs is on Sundale Road, starting at the mill between Upper and Lower Cellar Mill Roads, walking to the stream at the bottom of Doug Road, then up the hill. When we were first here, Sundale Road was not paved and had very little traffic. We've seen a huge increase in traffic on that road from development that is far less condensed than what is contemplated here. Along this walk, we regularly see great blue herons, wetlands, beavers, turtles, bears, and all kinds of bird, plant, and mammal life. This is not far from the proposed development on Lower Cellar Mill. Without a doubt, the proposed development, if permitted, the resulting increase in vehicle traffic will have a significant adverse impact on the wildlife and the environment. To add 13 new houses on Lower Cellar Mill is way out of scale and proportion in this quiet neighborhood. We must take responsibility for the precious ecosystem, be proper stewards of this beautiful land and the animals who live here. We must not allow excessive development to lead to death or injury to ourselves or to wildlife as a result of destruction of habitats and increase in traffic on this country road. I join many of my neighbors who spoke at the last meeting on February 16th and others who have and will speak tonight to ask the Town of Olive Planning Board to recognize that there are enough potential environmental impacts to require a full environmental impact assessment. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to this important issue.
You're welcome, and thank you, Ms. Turkell. Apologies for mispronouncing.
No worries.
So Mr. Andy Simon, you're up next, followed by Mr. Tom Carpenter, and then we do have 3 additional folks who wish to speak, and since we have the time, so Ms. Florence Schetzel, Mr. Marta Teladu, and then Emily Zumtobel, and then looks like a 4th now, Kathy Case. So please, Mr. Andy Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Donna Lawrence and I recently purchased the property.
Excuse me, Mr. Simon.
20. Yes.
Just if you could speak up, project, just issue here in you, and I'd hate to miss your comments.
I'm going to stop my video. Maybe that'll enhance the audio.
It's a good idea.
Donna Lawrence and I recently purchased a property at 220 Lower Cellar Mill, which is adjacent to the far end of the proposed development. Peter Romeo, who was on the list but apparently isn't here tonight, is the previous owner. And when I asked the agent why they're selling, she of course said because of the proposed development. I currently live in a rural area in Pennsylvania, and am an avid bicyclist, and I take my dogs out for walks a couple times a day. We live on a very infrequently traveled road. It's got 2 yellow lines down the center. It's wider than Sailor Mill Road. But even though it's wider, the dogs and I often have to step off the road to allow cars to pass by. A few times I noticed that the driver didn't appear to be paying attention. Perhaps the driver was looking down at the radio controls, looking at his cell phone, looking at the navigation screen. But living on a rural road is a wonderful thing, but living on a rural road that's all of a sudden going to see its traffic count increase 2-fold, 3-fold, perhaps more, can be very dangerous and scary. I've heard some folks already talk about close calls they've had just crossing the road to get the mail, or as Chris mentioned, crossing to get tools. I have submitted 2 written letters to this board. The first one, very general nature, just expressing my opposition to the change in the character of the road. And I've also submitted more recently reference to the memorandum written in 2020 by the Olive Conservation Advisory Council that mentioned that this board should use the natural resources inventory in arriving at this determination. And I quote, and this is all I've got to say, use that natural resources inventory so as to maximize the environmental health, sustainability, and beauty of the town. It seems to me that the folks coming out here to talk are what, 10 to 1, 12 to 1 opposed to this proposed development. If so many folks are opposed and so few people are interested enough to come out in favor of it, why do we even have to get to the legal aspects? I don't have anything against Mr. Dunn. I don't have anything against development.
Mr. Simon, if you could please just wrap it up.
It's just not the appropriate development for this particular location. Thank you.
And you're welcome, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Simon. So Mr. Carpenter, the floor is yours, and then Ms. Schatzel, you're up next, or Schatzel, I'm sorry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thanks for allowing me to speak today.
welcome.
I'll keep this as brief as I can. My name's Tom Carpenter. I live at 9 Lower Sailor Mill Road. It's on one of the first houses you come upon Lower Sailor Mill after County Route 2. I've lived in my home full-time for the last 35 years. I moved here primarily due to the quiet rural nature of this road. It's beautiful. You know, it had been very sparsely populated, as a lot of previous folks have already said. But I do have a number of concerns, as all the previous speakers have as well. But I'm going to focus primarily on the traffic concerns I have. My house is, you know, quite an old house. It was built in 1841. As many of you know, back then houses were built pretty close to the road. I'm literally, my front door is 16 feet from Lower Salem Mill Road. I hear every single car and truck go by. My windows rattle when they go by. I could feel the floor shake when the trucks go by. So again, the traffic is a big concern for me. And the fear that this subdivision is going to increase the traffic load by nearly 50%, considering, you know, the number of houses that are going to be built and what are there, 27 existing homes now in Lower Sailor Mill. So I'm anticipating, if this does go through, a very significant increase in traffic. A little background, you know, I raised my daughter here. I taught her to ride a bicycle on this road because I don't have a lot of level land behind me. I had never had any fears of being in the road. I walk my dog with my wife every single day on this road. I have for the past 35 years. And I've seen over the years, as normal, traffic increasing gradually. You know, there's a couple developments at the end of Lower Salem Mill that went in a few years ago. I saw increased traffic from that. Then came 2020, and a lot of you now who were here over the weekends are now here full time, which is wonderful. I love meeting new neighbors. You know, we've met quite a few of you over the last year or two, but that's not an additional 13 homes with 26 additional cars, possibly, all the support vehicles and things like that. As other people have mentioned, this is a very narrow road. It's only about 12 feet wide. There's no shoulder. My wife and I and my dog have come very close a number of times to being run over by construction trucks. That's never happened in the past. So folks tend to drive a little fast, particularly the big construction trucks. They don't know the road. You know, it's a dangerous situation. I live right up the street from Anna.
So, Mr. Carpenter, if you could start to wrap it up, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and anyway, so I think it's, in summary, it's really important for someone to do a comprehensive transportation impact study for this development. We need to really know what the extent of future and current traffic is going to be here. And I thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Ms. Schetzel, welcome back. You're a fan favorite. You're still on mute.
Well done.
David, can you help Ms. Schetzel out? Oh, hang on, Ms. Schetzel. You don't touch. Let David unmute you, please. There you go. You're good.
Okay.
And then just one second, Ms. Schetzel.
Sure.
Up next is Marta Toledo. Marta Toledo, or I apologize, Toledo. Go ahead, Ms. Schetzel.
Okay, thank you. My name is Florence Schetzel and I live on High Point Mountain Road, but I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of Norbert Bracklow at 412 Upper Sailor Mill Road and his sister, Monica Rockwell, at 400 Upper Sailor Mill Road. Both of their properties are downhill from and border the new constructions with the Rockwell Creek flowing through each of their properties. Their concerns are all water related. First, the stream. The already performed clear cutting and any additional clear cutting allows for runoff into the creek and in their backyard. This will increase the turbidity of the creek and therefore the natural habitat of waterfowl, fish, insects, and all other wildlife that are dependent on it, as well as the local wetlands. They are also concerned about the risk of flooding and possible contamination from this runoff. Second, the well water. How will 13 new wells affect the water table and or the aquifer? If the water table drops too much, this could impact their water quality and supply. Will these neighbors possibly need to drill deeper for new wells? Third, the 13 septic systems. Will they have a wastewater treatment facility or will they be DEP approved systems? Will they be above ground or traditional underground systems? There is the question of contamination because these 13 additional septic systems are all uphill from the stream and the property, the Norbert Bracklow and Monica Rockwell's property, making likely that the contamination will flow downhill. Thank you so much for your time and concern. So many people not here. I bet you they get through.
Thank you, Ms. Schetzel.
Oh, no.
Thank
Ms. Schetzel,
you.
can you just repeat who you were speaking? I was just taking notes. I
Yeah.
don't know if Janelle, did you capture that? I didn't capture
I
that.
did. It's Norbert Brocklow and Monica Rockwell.
He rocks, man.
Thank you very much.
Best secretary.
You
Okay.
need, since you've got this, right?
Yes, she got it. As somebody just noted, she rocks.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Miss Teladu?
Hi, Dave. Hi, members of the planning. You say Teledo, I say Teado. I respond to both. Not a problem.
So say that again, Teado?
Yes, thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Marta Teado. I live on 40 Grace Way. We live on 17 acres. My home was actually built by one of my neighbors. We've been here for 7 years, and I am just a short walk from the properties in question this evening. I'm going to keep my comments brief. I think the community has expressed itself very well, very cogently. And I really want to dispel two myths, and I want to close with a statement about our values. First, let me just say how much I appreciate the public service that the planning board is committed to. As someone who spent a good portion of my career in public service, nothing excites me more than to see the commitment of my fellow man and womankind devote so much of their time and energy to this process. So thank you for that. So let me just talk about a myth that keeps popping up, two that keep popping up in some of these debates, and that is one with great irony, that somehow that our objections, and you've heard them very cogently stated, to this development is out of a lack of openness. And I would just say that building $1 million homes is not about being open. It's about exclusivity. So I just want to state that it's quite in contrast to, I think, the openness that you have heard from this community. And the second myth, I think, was stated this evening again, I believe by Ms. Hughes, speaking on behalf of the developer, who said that, in fact, what it appears to be is that this community somehow fears the unknown, things we don't know. I would just like to clarify that we may be rural, but we are not ill-informed. I think what we have demonstrated as a rural community is that we have taken the time to educate ourselves, just as you have on the planning board. It takes an extraordinary amount of time to go through these documents, to listen to one another, and to understand what your charge is. So I just want to close by stating our values. There is no question that what is at stake here is the integrity of our community. But what is also at stake, and perhaps even greater, is the integrity of the process. This process, which we must have a reverence for, and a process that looks at standards, that looks at rules and laws and the secret protocols. So I will just close by saying how we come out on this has an enormous impact way beyond our time as stewards of both the process and of this community. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak and to be part of this. Thank you.
Noted, and thank you for your comments, Ms. Teado, right?
You got it, Dave.
You're welcome. Okay. Emily, Ms. Zumtobel?
Hi. My name's Emily Zumtobel. I live on Upper Solar Mill. I'm pretty new to the community, but some of you may know me from my random little sourdough bread deliveries.
Emily, pardon me, you're just coming through a little faint. If you can just, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I said I live on Upper Solar Mill. I'm pretty new to the community, but some of you may know me from my little sourdough bread deliveries. I first want to say that I'm not opposed to the idea of new neighbors, and I actually think it can be exciting and beneficial for the community. But I do not think that the speed and change to the environment that has already occurred is the right way to expand. Clear cutting multiple acres of land right away is no indication that anything is moving forward in an environmentally responsible way. I studied sustainability in college, and if I learned anything, it's the impact that new buildings can have on the environment and the community. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I definitely believe that a thorough environmental assessment is necessary. I also want to say that my favorite part of living here so far has been getting to walk around and see all the random wildlife that is here. Just a couple of days ago, I saw a beaver chewing on a giant piece of wood on the pond between Lower and Upper Solar Mill Road, and I haven't stopped thinking about it or talking about it since. I hate thinking about what will happen to this beaver and others with the reckless way that these 13 new homes are being developed. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay. Looks like Ms. Case had to leave, so I apologize for that. Just making sure, Ms. Case, Ms. Kathy Case, you're not still in attendance? Okay. So our last speaker of the evening is Mr. Norman Barron. Mr. Norman Barron, the floor is yours. Mr. Barron?
Good. Here we go.
Oh, okay, there you are. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm Norman Barron. I live on Spruce Hill Road, which is off of Brown. So I'm a couple of miles away from this development. I do ride my bike up there a lot, and it is, you know, it goes without saying that the trucks have changed all of that and made it a very dangerous place. Having said that, and having listened to all of the legal and observational arguments about what's going on here, I really can't imagine that the planning board is not going to use every tool that it has to make sure that every development, including this one now, gets a very, very close look and is under great scrutiny. That doesn't mean that we're unfair to anybody who wants to develop, but I believe that the town has a number of tools and all of them should be used. I think that a tidal wave of development could be heading our way. And it's sort of taken, I think, some of us by surprise, even though there were a little bit of inklings of it. And from what my wife Joyce learned, our particular area, since we're not protected by the New York City watershed, is going to be under greatest pressure because this is the land that developers can come to because we're not protected. So in looking at that, this tidal wave is coming in, and if we don't, build a big boat and learn how to sail it really quickly, I believe that the whole town could easily become overwhelmed. The process that we're in right now and what the planning board has given us as an opportunity to speak is absolutely marvelous and really encouraging. If there's one thing that I feel needs to be done about the current development is that every tool that you have should be used to limit the number of houses. I think that this development began before the heads up. And so that we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, and we're counting on the town to protect us by looking for every little detail that it can to limit this. Then, as a community, I really feel the town has to look at all of its processes. For instance, zoning, that to say that these people might have been able to build 1 acre, a house on each acre, I understand that that's not really feasible, but there's also the possibility of saying, well, maybe that shouldn't have been zoned for 1 acre. And it's time to look at the zoning laws before the tidal waves arise so that the town is prepared to have the kind of development that it really wants to have go on. I was struck by the fact that that there seems to be evidence that the current developer actually violated town regulations and town rules. Now, I'm not sure of this. This is just part of the talk around town. And I also recently read the town zoning laws where I saw that any developer who violates the permit process is subject to penalty. I think it was something like a $200 fine or 45 days in jail. I'm not suggesting you do that particular thing to anybody, but if there are penalties involved, why not apply them? I think the town of Olive needs to send a signal to all developers that they're welcome to come in, give us their proposals, we'll have a look at it, but every developer who wants to come into Olive should know that of all the towns around, Olive is the strictest. We have our rules and every single one of them is going to be enforced. If you don't enforce it, people are going to walk all over us. I have a suggestion about the roads, about the trucks that are really speeding on Lower Salem Mill, and that is to use our local police department to be out there to slow these people down and ticket them if they're speeding. I think that would be a great use of them. So I'll close by saying I think it's been a great process. I really can't imagine that there isn't going to be a positive declaration with all of the legal and observational arguments. And so I think that that goes without saying. And I'm looking to the future to see if the town can really step up and make itself known as the place where it's not going to be impossible to develop, but you're not going to get away with anything. It's going to be according to the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Barron.
Thank you.
And with that, we have reached the end of those who have requested to speak this evening. So with that, I'll make a motion that we suspend the public comment period of the seeker public hearing. May I have a second if that's, and by the way, Stephen, if that's an appropriate suggestion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill.
Are we going to, do we want to essentially solicit additional comments in writing for, say, the next 10 days?
I think that's what we agreed to.
Yep.
For sure. So just to make sure those in attendance heard that. So certainly we still want to hear from the community. So for the next 10 days, we would welcome your letters, USPS or via email to the town of Olive. And like I've said at the opening, we are reading those and acting upon the suggestions. So board, I believe the next steps are for us to revisit part 2 of the seeker and discuss that. Certainly wait for the feedback, Catherine, from the applicant in terms of your letter on February 24th.
Correct, Dave. Yeah, at this point, I think there's several items that the board is going to be unable to make a determination on because we're lacking information that is contained in our February 24th letter.
Right.
So I guess in terms of the next steps, I would say that the ball is definitely in the applicant's court to provide the additional requested information.
Right. So is Mr. Dunn and Mr. Steve, are they in attendance?
I see their engineer, Mr. Medenbach, is on.
Hi, Dave. Yep, I'm here and George is here and I think Barry is here.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
So I guess pertaining, with reference to the letter from February 24th, can you provide us with an update on any of those items? And then I believe that Catherine, so I know you had a site visit and are there any comments either from yourself or others regarding the traffic? And
no, I mean, I from a technical standpoint, the traffic does seem that it came up in almost every one of the comments. So in our February 24th letter, we did essentially ask the applicant to do a traffic study.
Right.
So I would say for projects of this size, for most cases, traffic studies are not necessary. Obviously, this project is not typical in the sense that the road network in the area is quite rural, quite narrow roads. So we are actually asking the applicant to do a rather involved traffic study for this project.
Right, so that was item number 4 of your letter. So I guess, I don't know, Mr. Dunn, who on your team is addressing that. Is that in motion? Do you have questions with respect to the request from the board via CT mail on that item?
Barry, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, we do. We are working. I don't know if they've started yet, but we have Cretan Manning, traffic consultants based up in Albany area, who are going to be preparing a study. We're trying to scope out
exactly what needs to be done. Having the public hearing tonight and getting comments from the public kind of adds to that. So we will be submitting a traffic study. That is in progress. I might point out too, the planning board might be aware, but we did hire a hydrogeologist to evaluate the water supply. We had one well on the whole property ready, and we put in a second well as a test well, and the results from that will be submitted not just to the health department, but of course we'll copy the planning board. And
is that pardon me, George, pardon me, is that Miller Hydro?
Yes.
Incorporated?
Yes. Yeah. Have you received anything already on that? I didn't think so.
Yes, Barry, that was received in our submission that you provided us in late January.
Oh, you did? Okay.
As the public was commenting, I just want to let the board know that I did email one of the many hydrogeologists that CT Mail employs to review that report. So maybe just to take a step back for the public to understand, CT Mail is a rather large company. At the meetings, I am, a licensed professional engineer. My focus is in civil engineering, but we do employ traffic experts, a whole team of professional geologists, hydrogeologists, many other folks. So it isn't just myself and my expertise reviewing this. I do have the ability to seek out many other professionals. So I am asking our hydrogeologists to review that report from Miller and provide any feedback. Because again, the concerns about the wells were something that was brought up tonight. It wasn't not necessarily brought up at last month's meeting, but it definitely was something new, and it was expressed by many of the adjoining neighbors that they were concerned about the impacts to wells. So we will let the board know if we have any concerns about what was contained in the Miller hydrogeological report, which included pump test results.
Thank you. And then Mr. Dunn or Frank, just in terms of the reconfiguration, right? So you've gone from 14 homes to 13, correct? We're still at 13, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other considerations around the reconfiguration? I guess I'm kind of referencing back to Stephen, your comments, whenever time ago, in terms of, maybe moving away from the road further or anything else. I guess Mr. Dunn, Mr. Seifert, anybody can speak to it, but have you given any thought, any additional thought to that? And certainly, you were in attendance this evening, so you're certainly hearing from the surrounding neighbors, but any thoughts on that? Or plans?
Well, I mean, you can clearly see in Barry's drawings that the two houses that are up now are closer to the road, and that has a lot to do with contour issues. But if you look at lot 13 and lot 11, those houses are much further off the road. And then on the ridge on the Pacoma Bly side, obviously it drops down and we want to stay away from the Pacoma Bly, but we have staggered those houses. The two houses that are up now are the closest to the road that any of the houses will be. And the house that replaced the farmhouse is actually further back than the existing farmhouse was.
Thank you, Frank. Board, do you have any comments, questions? I guess at this point, it's a matter of, at our next session, we're going back to, if you will, other applicants, and then we plan to revisit this. Janelle, I believe it's on the 20th of April. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I think on the sixth board, I think we should discuss next steps with respect to Sailor Mill, maybe at the conclusion of that meeting, and really define what we want to do on the 20th. Thoughts, input there?
Should be on the agenda.
It'll be on the agenda.
Dave, I have a request from somebody for the email to send comments. What email do you want that to go to?
Janelle, have we been using your email address for that? I believe we have that.
Yes.
Okay, I'll post that.
Okay, I was going to say that email is jperry, perry.olive@gmail.com. Thank you, David, for posting. It's in chat for those of you who need that. So board, I think we also have to consider, so we, referral to the county, right? So there's a bit of order of operations there, right? Our determination or potential draft determination. And then we discussed that, right, Mr. Bacon? I believe that's how we were going to proceed there. I know you're on mute.
Oh, I can,
There you are. You thought you were going to get away without speaking this evening. No way. You're an attorney. You must speak. Oh, we can't hear you though. Oh, no. Oh, no. Now we can't hear you. Anyway, Stephen, is that your recollection as well?
Yes.
All right, well, it's 9 o'clock. Want to thank everyone in attendance for your comments during the seeker public comment period. We've suspended it at this point, which gives us the ability, if we need to reopen it up. But again, we welcome your comments across the next 10 days via the email address or written to the Town of Olive and West Shokan and Watson Hollow Road. And like I shared, we plan to revisit this the meeting on Tuesday, the 20th of April. With that, I guess I'll make a motion that we close this evening's meeting. Can I get a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Helene Grant. Well, everyone be well. Thank you, and have a good rest of your week.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all very much
Thank
for
you.
attending and all your comments top to bottom. Thank you. We appreciate your time too.